Leo's heart raced as he peered out the plane window and spotted a figure sprawled across the wing. At first, he thought it might be a trick of the light, but the reality hit him hard when the figure moved. Passengers screamed and pressed against the windows, their faces a mix of fear and curiosity. Overwhelmed by a chilling sense of dread, Leo fumbled for his seatbelt, his mind swirling with questions. He could hardly believe his eyes. The man wore a mask, yet the rushing air distorted his features. Leo wondered how the man could possibly cling to the wing for so long. Unbeknownst to him, the man was just the beginning of an unfolding nightmare. Leo tightened his seatbelt as much as he could. With a window seat, he had a clear view of the man outside. Suddenly, the plane began to shake, and the seatbelt sign illuminated, triggering a wave of panic as passengers scrambled to their seats. "We're experiencing a bit of turbulence. There's nothing to worry about," the pilot announced over the intercom, concealing the truth. The man remained on the plane's wing, and Leo couldn't tear his gaze away from him. Then the plane started to lose altitude, and it seemed they were preparing to land. But when Leo looked down, all he saw was the vast ocean. What was the man doing on the wing? Why was the pilot lying? What would happen to Leo and the other passengers? It was supposed to be a 3-hour flight from Houston to Washington, D.C. Leo was en route to speak at a significant event, reviewing his notes one last time when he noticed the child in front of him had suddenly stopped moving. She had been fidgeting for the last 15 minutes, so her stillness was striking. Initially, he dismissed it, but then he heard gasps from around him and looked up curiously. Almost everyone in front of him was staring out the window, so he followed suit. For a moment, he thought he was imagining things when he saw a human figure lying on the airplane's wing. Suddenly, it moved, and screams erupted throughout the cabin. "There's someone on the wing," a woman yelled, causing panic inside the plane. The cabin crew did their best to get everyone back to their seats, but it was too late. A seed of panic had been planted, and it was growing fast. Leo reached for his seatbelt, wanting to be safe in case things went south. People scrambled to their seats, tightening their belts like maniacs. The man signaled something, but Leo couldn't understand what it was. Just as Leo thought he was beginning to understand the man, the plane began to shake, snapping him back to reality. The sound of the pilot's voice reverberated through the intercom. "We're experiencing slight turbulence, nothing to worry about." Suddenly, the plane began to lose altitude, and for a second, Leo thought they had arrived at their destination. But his relief quickly dissolved when he looked down at the ground as the plane continued its descent. Leo's eyes widened in horror. Below, instead of the familiar landscape of a runway, there was only the vast expanse of the ocean, getting ominously closer. Water splashed against the wing, and he could see waves churning as they approached. It felt like they were about to make a water landing. Compelled to look again, Leo pressed his face against the window. The man on the wing was gone. His heart dropped. Had he fallen? Just as Leo was about to turn away from the window, something caught his eye. A shadowy figure, like a hand, appeared briefly under the plane's wing and then disappeared. Was it the man or something else? Leo looked around, seeing the worried faces of the other passengers. Why wasn't the pilot explaining anything? The plane seemed inches from the ocean. Everyone braced, clutching their armrests, expecting a crash. But the plane steadied, skimming just above the surface. Leo and the others exhaled in relief, their bodies tense. Leo squeezed his eyes shut, his heart thumping wildly. When he dared to look again, land was underneath. It was a shocking sight. The passengers murmured, puzzled by the sudden appearance of terrain where seconds before there had only been water. The plane descended toward an island. Why here? Why were they even over the Pacific? None of it made sense. Despite the confusion, the plane landed smoothly on the island's makeshift runway. No bumps, no screeching, just a gentle roll to a stop. Passengers glanced at each other, bewildered but relieved. Leo's mind raced with questions. Why here? What was going on with this flight? "Ladies and gentlemen, we need to handle a quick procedural matter. Please remain seated." The pilot's voice echoed through the intercom. Arguments broke out among the passengers, voices raised in a cacophony of demands and questions. Leo pressed his face against the window, spotting movement on the ground. People were bustling around, which made him think they might finally be let out. Just as everyone was getting ready, the plane lurched forward. Leo's heart sank. The plane was moving again, but no one knew where to. Uncertainty gripped the cabin as passengers exchanged confused looks. Was the ordeal not over? In the distance, a large structure loomed, likely a hangar. The plane steered straight toward it. Leo and the others watched intently, trying to guess the reason. Could this be a standard procedure, or was something unusual at play? The proximity to the hangar suggested they wouldn't be flying again soon. The engine shut down, and the abrupt quiet felt eerie. From below, a clatter and bang echoed, sounding like people were moving inside the baggage hold. With the seatbelt sign off, people began roaming the aisles, their voices raised in demand for explanations. Leo saw his chance. He slipped by the preoccupied cabin crew, who were trying to soothe the anxious passengers. His heart raced as he moved stealthily toward the front of the plane, keenly aware of the crew's distraction as they dealt with the unrest. Reaching the cockpit door, Leo paused to knock but stopped when he heard voices inside. The pilots were talking, their tones laced with concern. He pressed his ear closer, catching bits of their worried conversation. "I can't believe this happened," one pilot said, his voice a mix of worry and disbelief. Leo clung to the door, ears tuned to the pilot's troubled whispers. "We're going to lose our jobs," one pilot lamented. "Suddenly, they have to find him," replied the other, his tone urgent. It was clear they were discussing the mysterious man who had been seen on the wing. Leo felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the pilots were as in the dark about the man's fate as everyone else. Suddenly, someone tapped Leo on the shoulder. It was a cabin crew member, her expression stern. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, gesturing toward the seats. "Please go back to your seat immediately." Reluctantly, Leo turned around and started back, his mind still racing with the pilot's words and the unresolved mysteries. He felt a mix of frustration and anxiety. As he complied with her request and walked back, a piercing scream erupted from the back of the plane. A passenger was pointing frantically out the window, her face a mask of terror. Leo quickened his pace, pushed by the urgency in the woman's voice and the alarmed faces around him. Outside, the man was clambering back atop the plane. Below him, officers had their guns drawn, pointed upwards. The scene was surreal, like something out of a high-stakes thriller. Shots rang out, sharp and loud against the hangar's walls. Everyone ducked instinctively, screams mingling with the sound of gunfire. No one on the plane knew who the man was or why he was there. He didn't appear dangerous or armed. Leo stared out the window, his confusion and fear growing. The passengers whispered among themselves, each trying to concoct a story that would make sense of the bizarre sighting. Looking out again, Leo saw the man lying on the wing, but now the cops were also climbing onto the plane. The officers moved cautiously, their presence escalating the situation further. The surreal spectacle held everyone's rapt attention, turning their fear into a morbid curiosity. Finally, Leo saw the man being handcuffed and escorted away by the police. Relief washed over him as he watched the officers lead the man toward a police vehicle parked near the hangar. It seemed the ordeal might finally be over, but so many questions remained unanswered. As the man was taken away, spontaneous applause broke out among the passengers. Relief was palpable in the cabin, yet the clapping was mingled with a sense of bewilderment. All the passengers were then guided to leave the plane through the emergency exit that had been opened earlier. After a few tense minutes of waiting on the tarmac, a bus arrived to transport them to the main airport terminal. Once they arrived at the airport, an announcement gave them two options: return home or continue to Washington on another flight. Leo, along with the other passengers, weighed his options. The day had been long and full of surprises, and the idea of another flight was hardly appealing, but his commitment in Washington was important. Curiosity got the better of Leo, and he asked an airport employee about the mysterious man on the wing. The employee disclosed that the man was a refugee trying to hitch a free ride in the baggage hold before being caught. Leo was stunned by the desperation such an act entailed, reflecting on the lengths some go to for hope. As Leo reflected on the refugee's plight, his phone buzzed incessantly. He had missed his conference, and his inbox was overflowing with messages from his manager demanding an explanation. Each notification served as a stark reminder of the real-world consequences of the day's delay and the potential fallout for his job. Leo realized he needed to handle the situation with care. He began drafting replies detailing the chaos of the day and citing the extraordinary circumstances. Fortunately, the incident had been covered by the news, providing the external validation he needed to support his story to his skeptical boss. Leo's damage control efforts paid off when his boss called to confirm he had seen the news. The extensive coverage of the bizarre airport incident validated Leo's explanation, easing the tension between them. Relieved but exhausted from the day's events, Leo contemplated his next steps, yearning for some semblance of normalcy. After the chaos, he decided to head home and rest. His mind was swirling with everything he had witnessed, and he needed time to process it all. Once home, he collapsed into his favorite chair, letting the tranquility of his space wash over him, a stark contrast to the day's turmoil. Leo uploaded the videos he had captured during the incident to his online profiles, and they quickly gained traction, attracting the attention of thousands. The raw footage lent credibility to his story, and soon he was contacted by a news show inviting him to share his experience on national television. His account became a focal point for discussions about airline safety and unusual incidents. The refugee who had attempted to hitch a free flight was officially charged, and the news spread through the community and online, igniting a mix of sympathy and outrage. This case highlighted issues that extended far beyond simple legalities, touching on human rights and desperation. The incident left Leo feeling uneasy about flying, casting a shadow of anxiety that lingered whenever he thought about airplanes. However, determined not to let fear control his life, he faced it head-on. Gradually, with each flight, his anxiety lessened, allowing him to reclaim the confidence he had lost. His journey of recovery was challenging but essential to restoring his sense of freedom and adventure.